Every afternoon after work, I took my bike and rode through the quiet suburban streets of my town, following a familiar route that led me past the lake, through a small wooded trail, and back home before sunset. It was a ritual I had come to cherish, a space where my thoughts could roam freely, where I didn't have to worry about anything but the road ahead. Spring was my favorite season for riding. The air was crisp, the scent of blooming flowers lingered in the breeze, and the days were getting longer. The golden light of the setting sun cast long shadows across the pavement, painting everything in warm hues. The world felt alive, buzzing with an energy that made every ride feel effortless. I never thought twice about my routine. I had done it hundreds of times before. The same roads, the same turns, the same peaceful rhythm. It was a Thursday evening about 8 months ago, and the sky was painted in warm shades of pink and orange. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the quiet suburban streets. A light breeze carried the scent of fresh-cut grass, mixing with the distant aroma of a backyard barbecue from a nearby home. It was the kind of peaceful evening that made me feel weightless, my mind lost in the steady rhythm of my pedaling. I was about 10 miles into my usual route, feeling the familiar burn in my legs as I approached the next stretch of road. The sound of my tires against the pavement filled my ears, interrupted only by the occasional chirp of birds settling in for the night. Everything felt normal, until I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. A car, a dark sedan, idling on the side of the road. It wasn't just the fact that it was there, but how it was there. Positioned just beyond a curve, partially hidden by the shadows of a large oak tree. Its engine was running, but the headlights were off, giving it an eerie stillness that sent a chill through me. I slowed my pace slightly, my senses suddenly on high alert. At first, I tried to dismiss it. People pulled over all the time, to check their phones, to take a call, to rest. But as I rode past, I caught a glimpse of the driver through the window. He was staring at me, not in a casual, passing glance sort of way. His gaze was fixed, unwavering, following me as I pedaled by. My chest tightened as I felt his eyes linger longer than they should. A shiver ran down my spine. I told myself I was overreacting. I kept going, shaking off the feeling. But a few minutes later, when I turned onto the next stretch of road, I saw the same car again. At first, I didn't think much of it. People pulled over all the time, to check their phones, to take a call, to rest. But as I rode past, I caught a glimpse of the driver through the window. He was staring at me. His eyes followed me as I pedaled by, and a shiver ran down my spine. I told myself I was overreacting. I kept going, shaking off the feeling. But a few minutes later, when I turned onto the next stretch of road, I saw the same car again. Now my heartbeat quickened. The car had moved ahead of me. It was parked further down the road, in a spot where it had no reason to be. I glanced over my shoulder, checking if there were other cyclists or pedestrians nearby. The road was empty. I forced myself to stay calm. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe he lived nearby. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Then, as I passed the car again, it pulled onto the road, slowly, keeping pace with me. My stomach twisted. This was not a coincidence. I sped up, my legs burning as I pushed harder on the pedals. The car followed, never accelerating too quickly, never overtaking me, just keeping close enough to let me know he was there. I couldn't see his face anymore, but I knew he was watching. I made a sharp turn onto a side street, hoping to lose him, but as I glanced back, my stomach dropped. The car slowed at the intersection, then turned after me. Panic surged through me. I was alone. The sun was setting, and he wasn't going away. I knew I had two choices: keep riding and hope I found someone, or ditch my bike and run. Then I saw it, a park up ahead, with a small group of people sitting on a bench. Relief flooded through me. If I could just reach them, he wouldn't try anything in public. I veered off the road and onto the park trail, my tires kicking up gravel as I pushed toward safety. Behind me, the car hesitated. Then it sped off, disappearing around the corner. I skidded to a stop near the bench, gasping for breath. The people barely glanced at me. They had no idea what had just happened. To them, I was just another cyclist stopping for a break. But I knew the truth. I had almost been caught. I waited in the park until my heart rate settled, then took a different route home, checking over my shoulder every few minutes. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. I heard the slow hum of his engine. I felt the weight of his gaze on me. The next day, I went to the police. I told them everything. The car, the way he followed me, the fear that had gripped me. They nodded, took my statement, said they'd keep an eye out. But without a license plate or a better description, there wasn't much they could do. "Be careful," one officer said, "and change your route." I did, but I never felt safe again. A week passed. Then 2. I avoided my usual paths. I started riding in more crowded areas during busier hours. I even bought a small can of pepper spray to carry with me. But one evening, as I was riding home from a different route, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A dark sedan, parked at the edge of my street. I stopped, heart hammering. The windows were tinted. I couldn't see inside. Was it him, or was I just paranoid? I turned my bike around and rode straight to a friend's house. I didn't go home that night. The next morning, I decided something had to change. I couldn't keep living in fear, constantly looking over my shoulder. I stopped riding alone. I changed my habits, altered my routes, and stayed in well-lit, crowded areas. I became hyper-aware of my surroundings, memorizing details of every car I passed. I never saw the sedan again. But I knew that didn't mean he was gone. It took a long time for me to feel normal again. Even now, when I ride, I stay alert. I keep my phone within reach, my escape routes planned. Because the truth is, bad things don't just happen in dark alleys or abandoned roads. They happen in broad daylight. They happen in familiar places. And sometimes, they happen when you least expect it. I was lucky that day. But not everyone is. And that's why I'll never let my guard down again. My best friend, Lauren, shared the same passion for cycling. We had a habit of challenging ourselves with new routes, constantly seeking out roads we hadn't explored before. It was our way of breaking free from routine, of adding a sense of adventure to our rides. That's when Lauren found it. A quiet, scenic route cutting through the countryside just outside town. "It's perfect," she had said, excitement sparkling in her eyes. "Barely any traffic, and the views are supposed to be incredible." I was hesitant. I liked sticking to roads we knew, places that felt familiar. But Lauren was persistent, and eventually, I gave in. We planned our ride for a Sunday afternoon, expecting nothing more than a peaceful ride through open fields and quiet roads. That afternoon, the sky was a brilliant shade of blue, the kind that made everything look crisp and alive. The temperature was perfect, warm but not overbearing, with a slight breeze that made pedaling effortless. We started on familiar roads before turning onto the new route. It was as beautiful as Lauren had described: rolling hills, scattered farmhouses, and endless fields of golden grass swaying in the wind. The road was smooth, and for the first few miles, it felt like we had discovered a hidden gem. Then we reached the turn. It was an old, unmarked road, narrower than the others, with cracked pavement and faded yellow lines. Trees lined both sides, their branches reaching over like skeletal fingers. The air felt different here, heavier still. Lauren slowed her pace. "This is it." I hesitated. Something about the road felt wrong. It was too quiet, too isolated. "We came this far," Lauren said. "Let's just see where it goes." So we went. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The road was more worn than the others, but there were no signs that it was abandoned. An occasional mailbox suggested people lived nearby, though we hadn't seen a single car since we turned. Then, about a mile in, I saw it. A single shoe. It was lying on the side of the road, partially hidden by tall grass. A sneaker, old and weathered. I slowed down, pointing it out to Lauren. "That's weird." She barely glanced at it. "Probably just fell off someone's truck." I wanted to believe that, but something about it unsettled me. We kept riding. The further we went, the more uneasy I felt. The trees grew denser, the air thick with the scent of damp earth. The road narrowed, and soon, the farmhouses had disappeared entirely. Then, we saw the house. It sat alone at the end of a long dirt driveway, old and weathered, its windows dark and empty. The porch sagged and the paint was peeling. A rusted pickup truck sat in the driveway, covered in a thick layer of dust, as if it hadn't moved in years. Lauren slowed to a stop. "Creepy." I swallowed hard. "Let's keep going." But just as I said it, I noticed something. The front door was open, just a crack. And then, from somewhere inside the house, I saw movement. A shadow passed behind one of the windows. My blood turned to ice. Lauren saw it too. "Did you see?" "Yes." For a moment, we both just stood there gripping our handlebars. Then, before either of us could speak, the front door creaked open slightly more. Then it slammed shut. The sound echoed through the trees, a deafening crack in the silence. Lauren and I locked eyes. "Go," I whispered. We turned our bikes and pedaled as fast as we could. I don't know how long we rode before I dared to look back. The house was gone, swallowed by the trees, but something else made my stomach drop. The truck. It was on the road behind us, its engine rumbling, headlights off, and it was moving. I couldn't see who was inside, but the way it rolled forward, slow and deliberate, sent pure terror through me. "They're following us," Lauren gasped. I didn't answer, I just pedaled harder. The road stretched ahead, endless and empty. The nearest turn was too far. There were no houses, no people, nothing but trees and open land. The truck gained speed. It was getting closer. I forced my legs to keep pushing, my heart hammering in my chest. The sound of the truck's engine roared behind us, closing in, drowning out everything else. Then up ahead, I saw it. A break in the trees, a dirt path barely visible cutting into the woods. I didn't think. I veered off the road, yanking my bike onto the path. Lauren followed, barely keeping balance as we hit the uneven ground. Branches scraped my arms, my tires skidding over roots and loose dirt. The truck wouldn't be able to follow us here. We had a chance. We rode until our lungs burned, until my legs felt like they would give out. The path twisted and turned, leading deeper into the woods. Eventually, the sound of the truck faded. We stopped, gasping for breath, listening. Nothing. We weren't safe yet. But we were no longer being chased. We needed to find a way back to civilization. Fast. It took us nearly an hour to find a road again. When we did, we rode straight into town without stopping. We didn't go to the police. What would we say? That a truck chased us? That we saw movement in an old house? We tried to tell ourselves we were overreacting, that it was just some locals trying to scare us. But deep down, we knew better. I haven't gone back to that road. Neither has Lauren. We don't talk about it much. But sometimes late at night, I wonder about the house. Was someone really inside? Who was driving that truck? And the question that haunts me most, what would have happened if we hadn't gotten away?